Hey my glam girls, welcome back to my channel. It's Chelsea, where we talk about all things glam and all things girly. I'm a beauty enthusiast that loves to talk about everything dealing with beauty and makeup, and today we are doing the eyeshadow tag part 1. Now, I've already done part 2, and I asked you all if you wanted me to do part 1, leave it down in the comment section, and I had an resounding yes. Do part 1. So that's what we're doing today. This tag was created by Ali Gines and Samantha March, and so thank you to the both of them for creating this tag. I had so much fun doing part 2 that I cannot wait to share with you part 1. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I truly do appreciate it, and let's get right into this video. So I will leave all of the questions in the description box should you want to participate in it. It's not the newest tag, but you know, if you want to, the questions are down there. And before I go on, everything that I'm wearing on my face will also be listed down below. All right, first question, show us your newest palette. I actually got this yesterday in the mail. I'm so excited because it came sooner than I thought. So I was experiencing a bit of FOMO, okay? And we all know that Chanel came out with their spring release, and they came out with this Mediterranean eyeshadow palette. So I didn't pick it up when it first came out, and then of course it sold out, and there was a back order of it. So I ordered it on back order. It said it would ship within 20 days, and it did. It actually got to me probably 2 weeks after I ordered it. So if you do have the option of still ordering it and it says it's on back order, I would still move forward with getting it, because I do know with Chanel, when they say something is limited edition, once it sells out, they bring it back maybe once, they're done with it. So don't sleep on it if you think you might want it. I was able to go in store and try this out, and I really enjoy the shades. So the shades are quite subtle. They're not going to be those types of eyeshadows that are going to be like high shine, high impact. But when I saw this, I was like, this is such a perfect vacation type palette, and it's also a great everyday type palette. So I am back in the office, and a lot of times when I am doing my makeup for work, I want a very simple eye look, but I also want it to look like I put more effort into it without doing it. So I think I can do this with this eyeshadow palette. I'll definitely share with you my thoughts after I use it and like really get a feel for it. But off of initial, you know, swatch and things like that in store, I was like, I want this palette. I want it enough to have it and not miss out on it. Okay, now the next question is, show us your oldest palette. My oldest palette is going to be my Miss Char girl. This is the Icon Palette. Do y'all remember this palette? Oh, the love that I have for this palette. I remember when it first came out, I was like, yes, I need it. And what really captivated me about this palette, because I didn't know Charlotte did this with all of her palettes, was that it came with like a sleeve that showed you how, like what order to use the eyeshadows in. And I was just so amazed by that. So you can use the shadows in the respective columns, but I also love that you can use the shadows in the rows as well. So the formula of this eyeshadow is quite unique. So looking at it closely, it looks like it's all shimmer shades, and for the most part they are. But then you have a shade like here, here, and here that kind of have more of a satin finish, so you can use them like a matte, like if you want to blend them into the crease, keep them concentrated on the outer corner of the eye, but then they also have some type of like sheen to them, so they're just not completely flat and matte. And I love it. This formulation is so good. I haven't used this palette in a really good while, but I do plan on picking it up this year because I do like to show it some love. But yes, this has survived 2-3 declutters now. I don't see myself getting rid of it anytime soon. Okay, then we have show your most expensive palette. This has to go to a palette that I actually did not purchase, but one of you all purchased for me. I still can't believe that you did it. So happy to have it. So this is the Natasha Denona, the green, oh, I almost dropped it, the green brown palette. So this one I think retails for $234, I want to say. And I love it. You all know how much I love the brand. And I remember always looking at these palettes and being like, I could never afford them. I'll never be able to have them. So I was just completely taken aback when I was like, wait, you did what? Like, what? So despite the price tag, the formulation is great. Like, this is not one of those palettes where it's like, we cost a whole bunch of money, but we are so not worth it. Like, I'm not gonna say it is worth the $234 because that is such, you know, a pretty steep price tag. But what I am gonna say is, if I had bought this palette, I would not feel like I wasted my money. So there's that. But I really do love this palette. I enjoy it. And now I do want, is it purple? Purple and blue? Yeah, I want that one too. Okay, then we have my most affordable palette. So this is by a brand called One Click Be Beauty, and my girl Tesla Beauty, she's on Instagram and here on YouTube. She did a collaboration with them and created this eyeshadow palette. So I believe this eyeshadow palette was $12, I want to say. And it is so good. Like, this is such a great, like, little everyday palette. Very easy to, you know, travel with. Very small and compact, but the formulation is actually really good. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I was actually kind of shocked. I was like, well, okay. But it won't be my cheapest palette. I actually have a palette on the way. Elf Cosmetics reached out to me and they're sending me some stuff. So when that palette comes, that will be my cheapest palette. But it's not here yet, so we can't talk about it. But you all will be seeing it in a future video. So yes, stay tuned for that. Okay, then we have my everyday palette. So I have so many palettes that I could choose for this one, but the first one that came to my head was, well, two things came to my head. So I'll show you the one that's like actually a palette, and then I'll show you what like my most recent obsessions have been for like everyday looks. So Natasha Denona Viva palette, if you've been here for a minute, this is not new to you. As a matter of fact, you're probably like, here she goes again. So I'm gonna keep it short. Viva does everything I needed to do. We've got warm, we've got cool, we've got neutral. We've got all the shades for a beautiful everyday look, but also a great smoky look, evening look, night out with the girlfriends type of look, night out by myself type of look. Like, we got all the looks in here, and this palette is so worth it. Let me tell you, if you don't have Viva, you've been looking at Viva, you might think you want Viva, go ahead and get your little Viva. It is so great. Formulation, definitely one of the best formulations that she has created, hands down. But my other obsession for everyday looks are going to be my Danessa Myricks Color Fix products. Like, by the time December 22 gets here, y'all are gonna be so sick of me and these Danessa products. But you know what? You're gonna learn to love them just as much as I love them. So the other day, threw on Celebration. So I'll do some very quick swatches. I'm not gonna swatch everything, but I'll do some quick swatches. Celebration is what she calls a cream shade, okay? And it's got a nice sheen to it, but the complexity of the shade is so great that it makes it a great one and done. So it's a beautiful taupey shade, and it's got these flecks of like, I would say like almost like a tan champagne feel to it. It's just not a standard taupey shade. And so I can literally take the shade, which I did the other day, blended it all over the eye, and I had a one and done look. The other day, I took another cream shade called Ballerina, and this was a beautiful one and done look. And what I love about these products is that you can blend them with your hand. You can also blend them with a brush. I like my finger because these do dry very quickly. So your finger warms up the product enough for you to have time to move it around. And then when it dries, it stays in place. So here is Ballerina. So I just built that up, and it was great for a one and done look. I would also say, and I am gonna do a dedicated video on the brand and especially the Color Fix products. Definitely work in small amounts so that it does not dry and stick to an area that you don't want them to stick to. Ooh, chocolate. Oh, chocolate is such a go-to shade for me because I can use it as a base shade. I can use it as, you know, a transition shade depending on what look I'm creating. But this is also a great one and done look because I have used it for one and done looks. And then, ooh, I got a couple more, guys. Just hold tight. We have Exposed. So I actually used Exposed today as the base for my eye look because it has a really beautiful mauve tone. So here is Exposed. And then actually what's on my lips? I have on Fantasy on my lips, and this is such a, oh, there's so many shades in here. Oh, can y'all see that? Oh, here we go. There's Fantasy. Look at that. Isn't that stunning? So this is what it looks like in the container, because I'm giving you a kind of weird angle, but this is what it looks like. So it's a purple base to it, but you have shifts of green and also like teal. It's such a gorgeous shade. So that's what I put on my lips, because I was like, my eye look is like, you know, purple base, it's cooler. I needed a cooler lipstick, and I was like, color fits the bill. And so, yes, those are the shades that I have been reaching for literally the most perfect, quick, one and done look. I mean, it doesn't get any faster than using a Color Fix product, because they do dry so quickly. So you do have to work quickly. But okay, let me jump off this spiel, because this whole video is about to be about Color Fix. Next one says, my most colorful palette. And it goes to Natasha Denona Circo Loco palette. So colorful, bright and cheery. This is one of those palettes that I like to use for spring and summer, because we got all the shades and all the colors that I personally like for those types of looks. But you can also use it at other times of the year. But I really like this layout because it doesn't look overly intimidating for a palette that has like so much color. And it's not the most colorful palette. You know, I know that there's even more extreme and brighter ones, but it's the most colorful one that I have. But I like that it's not intimidating. It's not overly stimulating, like, what the heck am I gonna do? Where do I start? Like, I think it's a very great palette to start with when you want to enter into color, but you also wanna kind of have a nice little layout kind of already established for you, so you don't have to completely get too creative. Like, I'm not saying that it's bad to be creative, but some people are like, look, I'm not trying to be, you know, the artist out here. I just want to do a cute little eye look and add some color. I think that's a really good palette to work with for that. Okay, so then it says show your smallest palette. And technically, this is my smallest palette, but I chose another one for this category. And I went with my Char Girls, Charlotte Tilbury. So this is her standard size of palette. This is the Queen of Glow palette, because this is my favorite Charlotte Tilbury quad. But I love how like tiny and compact they are, holding it up to the one-click palette. Well, if I hold it longitudinally, they're not too much, you know, they're not too much difference in size, but it's so cute and compact to travel with. You could definitely toss this in your purse. It's not gonna take up space if you're somebody who loves to do eyeshadow on the go. And I love it. Very lightweight, perfect, like tiny palettes, but I like that the majority of the palette, when you open it up, is going to be your eyeshadows, and then you have a really nice size functional mirror as well. So love it. And then for the next one, it says show us your largest palette. And technically, well, now that I'm looking at them both side by side, I don't know. I was gonna say technically my largest palette was going to be the purple brown palette. No, not the purple brown, the brown green palette from Natasha. But I have this palette here. This is by Lena Beauty, and this is her B palette. So I recently shared a look with this palette, and I think I was trying to make a video back in January. And so this is the palette, and I feel like this is probably my biggest palette in terms of like width and length and things like that. Is this not such a stunning palette? I love the shades in it. This palette is definitely very pigmented, but the mattes blend so well. So you're not just getting like a ton of pigment, but then like not so good quality eyeshadow. You're getting great quality, great pigmentation, and her packaging, she left out no details for this palette. Oh, it was so, like from the moment I got the box itself looked like this, like the actual shipping box. Then I opened up the box and the wrapping paper had bees and honeycombs all over it. I was like, oh, Lena, honey, you thought of everything. So great palette. And even though it is a larger, if I needed to travel with this, it's still, I would say, like sort of easy to travel with, because it's a nice square. So you could probably easily tuck it under, you know, your clothing or wherever you want to tuck it underneath. So I still like the packaging of it. Cause you know, there's some palettes that are large and you're like, I don't know how I'm gonna store this, cause it's so, you know, uniquely shaped. So yeah, it actually fits really nicely as to where I keep my eyeshadow. So happy about that. Okay, then we get into show your palette with the best memory. Oh, I immediately thought Mother Pat, okay. Mothership 5 Bronze Seduction. So this was my first Mother Pat palette. I received this for Christmas of 2017. Yes, or 18. But I remember asking for it and thinking like, okay, you know, Sean might get this. And then I got it and I was like, oh my gosh, I own a mothership. And I remember like opening up the gift like so slowly because I really wanted to like cherish all of the experience, but then also being very nervous. Like, am I gonna get this mothership palette and then be like, this was so not worth it? And I remember when I took it out of the packaging, I was like, oh my God, this is like heavy. And then I looked at the back and I was like, oh my God, this is like real gold. It's not real gold. But I was like, oh my gosh, like this is not cheap. Like the packaging was not cheap. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then when I opened up, y'all can laugh, I don't care what anybody says. When I opened up the palette, I was like here and I opened it up, I heard angels singing. I did. I was like, I get the hype. And I hadn't even touched the shadows. Had not. Like, maybe I didn't hear real angels singing, but like I heard fake angels singing. And I was like, I'm sold. I am sold. And I hadn't even tried them. And then I put them on my eyes and I was like, I am a fan for life. So this is like, it has to be one of my favorite palettes for the memory alone. But then I fell in love with the formula and the palette itself. It is still like one of my favorite palettes. So like Bronze Seduction is just, it's a whole like vibe, mood, nostalgia. It's like all of those things. Okay, then we get into show a palette worth the hype. Okay, if you've ever heard of Natasha Denona, you probably have also heard of this one palette. There's a couple palettes that I feel like she's known for, but I rarely hear someone say that they don't love this palette. It's the Glam Palette. This palette is so worth the hype. Now, we did start this palette off with a little controversy. The names that she chose for the palette, people had some issues with them. But when we get into the formulation, this palette is so beautifully formulated. And what took my breath away when I first tried this palette, I bought it because I'm a stan. You know, if Natasha comes out with something, I'm getting it. I bought it and I was like, I'm not really a cool tone wearer at the time. And I was like, but I'm gonna get it because, you know, I love her and her products. And I was so shocked by how neutral this palette is and not so cool toned. So when I saw it in promo pictures, I was like, this looks so cool. Am I gonna enjoy it? Because I remember getting the Anastasia Sultry palette and I tried to like it. The looks that I created, I was like, these are really beautiful. The formula is great, but I ended up giving it to one of my friends because I was like, it's just too cool for me at the time. If I still had Sultry now, oh my gosh, I would cherish and love it because I so appreciate cool tones now. So when I dove into this palette, I was like, oh my gosh, this is not as cool as I thought. But I mean, outside of the gold palette, I would say this is probably her next best formulated palette. I mean, the formulation is just, she killed it with it. But like I said, for me, I love the shades that she chose. She gave the warm lovers a little section. We got a little section right here of warm tones, but then she gave us a lot of neutrals to work with, and then she gave us some, you know, true cool tone shades. And I think this palette is stunning. Like, if someone's asking for like the best of the best from the brand, I will definitely have Glam in that recommendation list. So all the hype that this palette got, I believe that the hype is so real around it. Now, a palette that is not worth the hype, okay? The Sunset palette by Natasha. Now hear me out. I am so happy I have this palette and I absolutely love it. But this palette is not worth the $125 because the formula is okay. The formula is good, but it is not her best formula. So when I bought this palette, I got it for half off, and I am so happy that that is the price that I paid for it. So I think if you want this palette, definitely get it on sale. It tends to go on sale a lot, but it's not a palette, like if I would have bought this palette when it first came out, when all the hype was going on around it, if I would have paid the price for it, I would have been disappointed because I would have been like, is it just me? Maybe it's me, and I don't get the hype around it. I think the hype around it was more so because it was such a warm tone palette, and I remember when it came out, everybody wanted all the warm tone eyeshadows. I think this is good, it's just not the best formula out there. And that's that. I mean, I love it, I enjoy it, I still use it, but you know, it's just, do not buy this full price. Wait till it goes on sale and then appreciate it at that point, because I feel like you might just be a little underwhelmed if you were to buy it full price. Then we get into show your favorite palette from my favorite brand. So y'all know how much I ride hard for Tom Ford Nude Dip. And I said what I can't do is talk about Nude Dip anymore. But just know, if you know me, Nude Dip is number one, okay? Number one in terms of like my favorite Tom Ford palettes. But I did want to talk about Tom Ford because I love his quads. I have other brands that I love, but I was like, I talk about Natasha all the time. I talk about Pat all the time. I've actually done dedicated videos for them, like ranking videos of my favorites from the brand. But I was like, Tom Ford, I really love his quads. And no, I have not gotten the new cream ones. I'm gonna get those because I have to try the formula. But his wet dry formula is by far just one of my faves. Like I've said before, if I'm traveling, like Tom Ford is coming with me in some way, shape, or form. So on my eyes today, I'm actually wearing Virgin Orchid. So this is what Virgin Orchid looks like. And it was my first time using it today, even though I've had this quad for like months. I just hadn't pulled it out. But it's this wet dry formula, did not disappoint. Love the way that my eye look came out. But another quad from him that I love, I don't talk about it nearly as much as I do Nude Dip, but like, oof, it's another one of those perfect vacation eye quads. Honeymoon by Tom Ford. It is like the best warm toned travel palette. I love this one so much. I love the looks that I get from it, and I can't get enough of it. Like I said, I don't talk about it as much on my channel as I do Nude Dip, but it is still a palette that I travel with a lot, that if I'm like, I need a really good kind of like, I don't need to think through type of eye look, and I don't want a ton of shades to choose from, like Honeymoon is in the repertoire just like Nude Dip is, and so forth. So Tom Ford is definitely one of my favorite brands when it comes to eyeshadows, but specifically it's the wet dry formula. Okay, then we get into, last question. I didn't realize we had gone by so far. Show your most used palette. And I could not just stick to one. So I have 3 options for you. So I have number 1. This one does not look as used as my old one. So my old one I bought when it first came out and it broke. So the brand actually sent me a new one. So the one that I'm showing you is the one that the brand sent me. Natasha's Mini Nude Palette. I have used this palette so much, and I'm talking more so the original one that I bought. This was like, at one point in time, this was my go-to travel palette, everyday palette. Like I use this palette for any type of look I could think of because the formulation was so good. This is, in my opinion, her best formulated mini palette. Between this and the mini gold, you cannot go wrong with either one. I love this palette. I love that even though we have only 2 matte shades, the 2 matte shades that she chose work so good for my complexion. And I really think they would work well for any complexion, but the way that I like to do my makeup, these 2 shades just perfect. And this shimmer right here is by far one of my favorite shimmers across the board. I love just like the duochrome shift that the shimmer brings. Amazing. Okay, then, I said I wasn't gonna talk about it, but I'm just gonna throw it up here and throw it down. Nude Dip, y'all already know my obsession with it, so we're gonna just keep it moving. Do y'all remember Anastasia Jackie Aina? Oh, this palette should still be on the market. I feel like this palette did not get the love it should have gotten. It got a whole lot of love, but it should have gotten way more love. This is, in my opinion, the best Anastasia palette that has ever been made. Jackie kills it with the shades that she chose, the names that she chose, the layout of this palette. Like, I cannot sing its praises enough. I will never declutter this palette. Even when it gets old and I can't use it, I'm still gonna keep it. They need to bring it back. They just need to bring it back. And then finally, my most used palette for this category, not out of all the ones I showed you, but the last one I'm gonna talk about, Natasha Denona Bronze Palette. I could not get enough of this palette when it first came out, and I remember like all of that year, so that was 2020 I think, or 19, whichever year it was, I just could not get enough of it. I could not get enough of this palette. And yes, a lot of these tones might be very similar, but it just does something to my warm toned, bronzy eye look soul. Like, it was so great. One of her best formulated formulas in my opinion as well. So guys, I hope that you enjoyed this eyeshadow tag. Definitely leave me down in the comment section what some of your favorites were from the questions. I would love to hear. And if you've made it to this point in the video and you have yet to subscribe to my channel, I would love for you to consider subscribing and joining the Glam Girl Squad. And guys, that is it. Thank you so much for watching, and I really hope to see you in my very next video. Bye guys.